All right, welcome to week 16. We'll be looking at the topics we've treated in the class lesson, and we're going to look at objects and scope, and we're going to look at HTML events and string and string methods and search in strings, and also we're going to look at number method properties. So hopefully the time we have today, we'll be able to look at all these topics. Now, we've seen and we've also learned about objects and scope from the class lesson. So what we'll be doing as usual on the live class is we're going to put this into an exercise. So we're going to demonstrate this with an exercise to see how it works. Right now, I have created a template for these illustrations. I have my sections. I have created styles for each section. That's why we have these contents displayed on the web page. Now, I have for the first section, we're going to illustrate objects and scope. We're going to have a button. We have a button whereby we're going to look at examples of objects and scope. So now on this section, the button has a JavaScript attribute on click, and it holds a function that we're going to write the script for that would illustrate objects and scope. And then we have the div that would display the outputs of the function that we're going to write for this section. On the next section, we have for HTML events and DOM, and this is just going to show what happens when you do something on the web page. When you click, when you hover, and inside this section, I have a paragraph that illustrates what we're going to do. So we expect that when we hover over the text below, it will change its color. So we have a paragraph that has two JavaScript attributes, and these are HTML events attributes. We have on mouse over, and we're going to create a function that will do something to the color of the paragraph when we mouse over, and on mouse out, we're going to also do something that would change the color once the mouse leaves the text. And then we have for string searching. So we're going to look, we have for string methods, we're going to look at different string methods, and the inputs elements we have here is going to take in inputs. It's going to take in strings, and then we're going to do something to those strings. We're going to manipulate those strings using the string methods that we've learned from the class lesson. On the other section we have here, we're going to look at string searching. So we're going to enter in the inputs. We have an input here, and we're going to enter a string, and we're going to search the string. So we looked at indexes in the class lesson. We're going to look at make use of that in this section. And then for the last section, we have number methods and properties. So we're going to enter a number in the inputs, and we're going to see what properties these numbers hold. All right, so just like we did for the last lesson, we have functions. We've created functions that name of functions that we'll be using for each section. All right, so let's go to the first one, which is objects and scope. We'll begin by creating the function we have specified for this section, which is when we click the button, we want this function show scope example to give us something. So I'm going to copy this, and we'll start with the function. So to create a function, we use the function keyword, and then we give the name of the function. And we're going to write a function in the block of curly brace. All right, now we've looked at the different ways to assign a variable to a value. So we said in the class lesson what makes a variable a global variable and what makes a variable a local variable. So I want to create a global variable here, and my global variable would be let's. So I'm going to use global var as my variable. Let global variable equal to. So since it's a string, I'm going to put it in a quotes and say I am a global variable. I'm going to end this line of code. And now I want to show you why this is called a global variable. So normally we've learned that any variable that is created or assigned outside a block of code is called a global variable and has a global scope, as well as any variable we create inside a block of code or in a function, which we're going to do here, is known as a local scope or known as a local variable. So I want to create a local variable. Since this is this is going to be done inside the function, so I'll give a variable here that will be called local variable. So I'll say let's I want to stick to this convention. I'll make the first letter of every word a capital letter, and I'm going to do the same here. So let's local variable and a pair of quotes. I say I am a local variable. Now, how do we assess these variables? Now, to assess these variables depends on where we are assessing them from. So, the characteristics of a variable that has a global scope is that you can assess this variable from anywhere on the script. Now, this is inside a function. It doesn't stop us from assessing the global variable because it was assigned outside the function, so it has a global scope. But the local variable we have created here cannot be assessed outside this block of code. That's why it has a local scope. All right, so I want to create an output that we're going to use to print this to the screen. So I'll say let's output equal to. So this is going to be a formatted string that would tell which is local and which is accessible. So I would say so this is just a formatted string. Say global variable plus, so which is our global variable, the one we have created outside. So I'm going to take this and add here. So we expect that the value we gave for the global variable will be displayed since we have called the variable we used to save this value. So I'm just going to call the variable with the name, and I want to add it to the local variable. I want them to display on the same line, but I'll just create a break tag for this. So in a pair of quotes as well, I'm going to put a break tag so it displays below the global variable. Now this is for the local variable, so we say local variable, and I'm just going to add the local variable we created. Okay. Now, this is where it gets tricky. For us to be able to access the local variable, we have to print this from the function inside this block of code. Because if we do this, if we want to get the, so we have a div that we want to output this, this function. Now, we expect that once this is clicked, we want to call this ID that we've added to this container to display the elements, to display the contents that we've created in the values, in the variables, sorry. So now to access this local variable, we have to call that ID to display the values from this function. If we do it outside the function, we will not be able to access the local variable because it will not be able to tell from the output that this is a local variable because it doesn't even know that there's a variable called local variable. All right, so to print this, we use the document, the get elements by ID, and our ID, which we have here, is called scope out. I'm just going to paste it in here. That's inner HTML. And what do we want to print out? We want to print out outputs. So I'm just going to paste outputs here. And I'll save this. So outputs, when we print out the output, we expect to get the global variable. Because it's a global scope, we can access it from inside this function, and then we also expect to get local variable since it was created inside this exact function and not in another function. So that's why we're able to access this. So I'll save this, refresh the page, and when I click the button, it calls the function and gives us the outputs that we've created inside, and it says global variable, I am a global variable, local variable, I am a local variable. So this is just a simple way to show how the scope works in JavaScript. So I've been able to access the global variable from inside this function, and we'll also access the local variable from inside the function. Now, if I put this outside this function and I call this output here, I will get an error because it doesn't know what output is. Output is a variable we use to create a formatted string to combine both variables. So output is a variable as well. Now it's not going to be able to read output because output was created inside the block of scope, and the only thing we can access here is the global variable because it was created outside and has a global scope. All right, so that's for objects and scope. Let's look at HTML events and DOM. I'm going to add my comments here. Okay. Now for this, we are going to have a function, and our function, which we want to call for this section, is called, okay, so we have two functions. We want something to happen when we hover over this text. So this is for events, and this is an event attribute. We have looked at onClick in the last lesson, and we also have onClick here, which is also an event attribute, JavaScript attribute. Now on mouse over, we are going to create a function called change color, and this function is going to change the color of the text once we hover over it. So that's an event. When something is done, it's called an event. So change color is the function we want to create a function for first, before. This is for when the mouse hovers on the text, and then we're also going to get create another function for when the mouse is out the text. All right, so to get this, we use documents. We're going to use, there are different ways to do this, but we're going to use documents.getElements by ID. And our ID for this illustration or on this paragraph is called hover text. So I'm going to paste it here. So the inner HTML, but sorry. Now, since we want to apply a color, we want to use this element ID to create a style.
Statement.
Yes.
Sorry for cutting you. I've always wanted to ask this question. Why is it that always you have to bring the .inner HTML?
Okay, so
during the JavaScript.
Okay, so like I said, there are different ways to output content to the web page. Now, inner HTML is one way we or output content, or any of the function, whatever function we've created. Could be just a string, could be a set, or any of the data types we want to output on the HTML page. So just like the name, inner HTML is going to display on the HTML document, which is the page you find here. So now I want to use something else for this illustration. So you see that we don't always use inner HTML. I'm going to use .style because I only want to change the style of this ID. So is the ID we're using to change the style or the color. Since style is the method, and then we want to change the color. So you see, we have we have a paragraph and we have an ID inside this paragraph. We're going to use it to change the style, which is the color of this paragraph. So we're not using inner HTML this time, we're using style. And now what style do we want to add to the paragraph? We want to change the color. So I'm going to say .color. Now I'm going to supply the color I want to change here. I want to give it, since the event attributes we are using is on mouse over. So when we hover our mouse over the text, we want the color to change to, let's say, red. So this is only for when we hover over the text. Now, when we hover out the mouse, there's also an attribute we use for that, which is on mouse out, and the function we have for that is reset color. So I'm going to use this function to create something to make sure that when we hover on mouse out, we get a different color. So you see the text says hover over me, and that's what we're going to do. So it will just similar to the function for hover. So the first function, we're just going to do something similar and change the color as well. But the difference is the attributes. So the attributes defines how the function will be applied. Is it going to be applied before or after? So on mouse out and on mouse over determines that. So now this function is just simply going to be the same as the same function for mouse over. So I'll say function, and I'll also give the function for mouse out, and we're basically just going to use the same ID to change the color as well. So I'll copy this, and this time the color should be green. So I'll save, and we'll see how this displays on the web page. Now you see I hovered over the text and it gives me red. But if I hover mouse out, it's okay. This didn't display, so there's some okay, yeah. So now you see it gives me green. Once mouse out, and once I put my mouse on the text, it gives me red. So this is just a simple way to illustrate events. When something is done, you hover, you click, you unload, wait for maybe an image to load, and something is done as well once the image is loaded completely. So there are different event attributes we can make use of in JavaScript. All right, so we'll go to the next, which is strings and strings method. Please feel free to ask questions if you feel lost.
So what if you are using an external this thing, JavaScript? When you are using because of my laptop, I've not been able to go through the classes this thing lessons for JavaScript. That's why I'm asking plenty questions. So
no, it's
if
okay.
you are using an external JavaScript, would you still bring the .inner HTML when you declare the document.get element?
Yes, it's still the same thing. Now, recall that for you to write your script on the HTML document, you have to make use of the script elements. So this means that whatever is written here is read as JavaScript environment. It's different from the HTML. So if I write any of this JavaScript syntax outside this script tag, it's not going to read it. Neither is it going to see it as a JavaScript, because the environment is not for JavaScript syntaxes. So that's why it reads it properly here, just as it would for an external JavaScript. So it's the same thing you have for your style sheet. Remember, if you want to have an embedded style sheet, let's say like we have here, inside this style, this is a CSS environment. Because we have added the style tag, it makes it possible for us to write styles inside the style element. But if we write this style outside this style element, it would not read it as a style. So it's the same thing for the script. So you can view this.
That the .inner HTML is a constant thing that always you have to be writing. You have to be bringing.
As you can see, it's not constant. It's only when you need to print something, like depending on
in an
Yes.
HTML, from an HTML this time. Okay.
Document. Yes. So you see here, I didn't use the inner.html. There are different. Okay, so
Okay.
we're going to look at another method here. There are different methods. So let's look at another one here for strings and string methods. So you see that it's not only that inner HTML. And also we can get elements by class, not only ID. There are different ways to get elements from our HTML, and we decide what we want to do to that element. So just if we're using a class, get element by class, we specify the class name here as well, like we have been doing for the IDs. All right, so let's look at something else that we're going to use something different other than style or inner HTML. Okay, now for the strings method, we want to have we have the heading. So instead of going up here, I'll just describe it from here. We have the heading and we have a paragraph that says enter a string to manipulate. So we want to look at string methods. So you said you haven't looked at the class lesson, but it's important that you do, so you have more understanding how string methods works. So I'm just going to explain a little on it, and to have more understanding, you have to go back to the class lesson. So string methods helps us to manipulate strings. Like we have looked at strings, the data type. Basically, it's the text is a text. Any text that is in quotes is a string. So just like we have this text in quotes, it's known as a string data type. That's why you see quotes around there. So the data types are called strings. We have numbers, and numbers are not quoted. Numbers are just written as a number. So we know them, we'll call them okay, so we're going to look at that, but let's, because of time, quickly look at the string so we see how we make use of a different method other than inner HTML or style. So I'm going to create a function here that would contain all the variables that would hold the different string methods. So you see how we'll make use of variables. Variables could hold functions, variables could hold just string values, numbers, or it could hold methods as well. So we're going to use variables to define some methods for this string. Now, first, we want to have the function, because we have specified on the HTML that's on this section, we have an input field. So you see where we have the paragraph, enter a string to manipulate, which is what we have here, enter a string to manipulate. And then we have an input. So you recall from forms what inputs means. Input elements we use to enter informations on the web page. So here the type is text, because we expect that we are dealing with strings. So we changed the type to text. And then the ID, which we use to call this inputs, and a placeholder that says type something. So that's why we have the placeholder text inside the input. So what do we want to do? We want to create a function that would take any input, any string input that is entered inside this input field. We want to manipulate it using the different string methods. Then once this button is clicked, that's why we have the events attributes that says on click. So once we click this button, it will call the function that we want to create for these string methods. So the function name is manipulate string. So the name of this button is also called manipulate string. And then, as usual, we have a container that will display the outputs when we call with the ID. All right, so the function, once this button is clicked, is called manipulate string. So I'm going to copy this. Now, let's start with the variables. So, like I said, we have different data types, and string is one of the data types. So we expect that, and we want to perform a string method on manipulation on this, on any string that will be entered inside this place. So we want to have a variable that will take these inputs, whatever is entered. We just want this variable to be like a container that is going to store anything that is entered in this input. So first we put it in a variable, and we're going to call this variable str. So I want to make sure that whatever is entered in the input field is stored inside this variable. And how do we do that? So this is where the second method comes in. The other method I want to show you. Now I'm going to use documents.getElements. So I'm going to use getElement by ID. There is an ID in the input field, if you recall from what I explained. There's an ID in the input field called string inputs. So I'm going to get that ID. And then I would input it here. So I want to get the inputs. So any value that is entered inside this input field. So how do I get that? Now, instead of using .style or .inner.html, I'll be using .value. And this just signifies that whatever value that is entered in the input field, since I have bind it with the ID to this string, that whatever is entered, it should be stored inside this variable. So all I need here is the value. I don't want to print it out. I don't want to change the color. I just want the value. So this is going to give me the value of the input field. Now I'm going to create another variable. Sorry. We're meant to say let's string. Now, let's have another variable. Now, we want to look at the different methods. We'll not be able to look at all of them, but we're just going to look at some important ones. So we say let upper. This is a variable. So we say let upper equal to, now I want to apply methods. So methods are, you're going to see how the method works. Now, this method is for uppercase. I want that whenever an input is entered, let's say we type something in smaller cases, lower cases, I want it to automatically change to uppercase. So that's what the methods, that's where method comes in. String methods, particularly. String methods is what we use to manipulate that. So now, I don't know what will be entered, but if it's a small letter, I want to make sure that it displays as an uppercase letter. That's why the name of this variable, I named it upper. So what is entered is going to be stored in the string variable. So I'm going to call the string, this variable, and say str. Now, we apply methods to variables with adding a dot first and then mention the method. So there are several methods in JavaScript. There are several string methods. There are methods for all data types. So this is particularly for strings. Now, to get the uppercase, we use the method called toUpper, and it's written like this, with every first word after the first letter as an uppercase. Case. So this is the name of the method, toUpper, and I'm going to add, because it's a method like this, I'm going to, and we don't know what will be entered yet, so we're going to have an empty parenthesis in the front like this. So now this will make sure that whatever value that is entered in the string, it has entered in the input that we've called the ID, whatever value that will be entered will be stored in this string, and then now we can do something to it. We want it to display, convert it to uppercase letters if it's not uppercase letter. So it's not even going to check, but if it's not an uppercase letter, this method will make sure that it displays as an uppercase letter. And then let's have another method that will display, if it's uppercase already, we want it to display lowercase. So I'm just going to name this lower. And just like we did for the uppercase, we just have to call the string, the variable that we use to store the value. So we'll say str. Now the name of this method is called toLowercase. So that's the name of the method. This is going to make sure whatever is entered, if it's in uppercase, it will make sure it goes to lowercase. So we're going to see how this works when we combine all of them to output to the screen. Now, there's also another method that can tell us what the first character of the string is. So because characters are indexed in JavaScript, so when we say index, it's basically counted in numbers. And now if we want to count, let's say this is a word now, and we want to count this as a value that is entered. It starts from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it starts from 0 and counts onwards to the end. So that's how the index is counted. You can you get more understanding when you watch the class lesson. It's elaborated more on the class lesson. So now I want to make sure that whatever is entered, this method will tell us the first character. What is the first character? If we're going to use the index to get the first character, if whatever letter it is that is entered. So, but we're going to name this variable first, which is, I'm going to call this char. And we're going to make use of the variable that stores the value. So whatever is entered, and then the name of the method, which is called char at. As well as the parentheses. Now, because we want to get something exactly from this method, unlike the other methods, we don't know what will be entered, so we did not specify. So we want to get exactly the first character. We could get maybe the second character by the index, and we just know that once we say 0, for example, this will be the first character. Now you see, this is not a string. This is a number data type, so it's not in quotes. So I could say 0, and that means I'm talking about the first character in this string. Or I could say 1, and that means I'm talking about the second character. So I think here we're just going to get the first character for this. Now, we can also use methods to replace specific text on a string. So let's look at that. So we say let's replace equal to same string, since that's where we're going to have the value. And then the method, name of the method is called replace. Now inside the parentheses, we're going to specify the letters. Since it's a string and we expect that letters, we have already set the type of input to text, so we expect that what will be entered here are letters. We're dealing with strings, so we now can specify which letter we want to replace. So let's say the user enters something called enters a value that has letter A in it. So I want to make sure that the A displays differently. So let's say, since it's a string, always remember to put it in quotes. So the letter A, if there's a letter A in the value that the user enters, so preceded by a comma, I want it to be replaced by the symbol at. I can replace it with anything, but I just want this to be unique so it doesn't have different letter, or so it doesn't get confusing. So I just want the symbol at to replace the first letter A that it would read inside the string. So I'm going to close this, and then now we can have our output. So let's output this. We're going to create an output variable to combine all of this. So we don't want to do it one by one. We want to just output everything all together. So just like we did a formatted string for the other, we're going to do the same here. So now the first thing that will be printed out will be the wants it to be that once this string is entered, we want the first thing to display first what the user enters, which will be in the string. So let's say original, sorry, in a quote, say original string so original string. Now, just like we did, I want to add the string where we have it saved. So I'm just going to type str plus. Next, we want it to display below the next method. That's why I'm using the break tag. And then this will be for the uppercase. So it will just give us uppercase. This is the text we're going to see. Uppercase string. Uppercase methods will give us the method for uppercase, which we're going to display with the variable we created for it called upper. And next we want the lowercase to display. So I'm going to put this in a break tag. And then this will be for lower. And what it's going to display is the variable, the method we add as a value to the variable lower. So the name is called lower. And we also want the first character in the next line. So this will be for first character. If we had used 1, I could just say second character, because 0 is for the first character, is the index for first that represents first character. So I'll say first character. And first character is, we saved it in the variable called char. And the last one is replaced. So this will be named replaced. And we're just going to call the variable called replaced, where we saved the method, and we expect that whatever letter A in the text should give us at, should be changed, replaced with at instead. So now we're going to call this, we're going to use the document.getElements by ID. And the ID for this, let's look at the string section. The ID is string output. because we want it to be printed out on the HTML page, so we say .inner HTML equal to we want output printed out, since that is what holds the formatted string. Okay, so I've saved this. I'm going to refresh the page, and hopefully if all goes well, we are going to have our string manipulated. So let's use a text. I'm going to first start with a capital letter J. I'm going to type JavaScript in here. Java scripts. So I use the S as a capital letter. So we click, and now just as we've formatted the strings and saved them in variables with the methods, we have them displayed the way we have set it. So first we said the original should display, which is the string entered exactly as it is, which is JavaScript starting with the capital letter J and the uppercase letter as well, S. Now, we created a method for upper to make sure that all texts are converted to uppercase. And we added it to the string here called upper. And that's why we have uppercase as uppercase here, JavaScript. So you see all the text now are in uppercase. And then we set lowercase to make sure that all of the texts are displayed in lowercase, which is the method we used in lowercase variable. And when we add it to our string, formatted string here, it gives us all the texts we entered as lowercase. And then first character, which we specified here as 0 to give us, signifies the first index. So I'm using this as an example, but this is the string. So the first character here is J, and we got it from using the index 0, since the strings are indexed. So that's why the first character is J. So if we specify any number here, like say 2, 3, 4, it will give us the exact representation of 0, 1, 2, 3. So 2 will be V and 3 will be A. Now, we also use the method to replace the letter A. So we say whatever is entered, if it holds a letter A, we want it replaced with the symbol @ So that's why the first letter A here has changed to the symbol @ So it only goes after the first letter it's recognized, as we have specified here. So it sees the first A and changes it to @ symbol. That's why we have J @ JavaScript. So this is string methods. Now there are more string methods. I would encourage you to watch the class lesson to see the rest that were mentioned. But this is as much as we can because of the time we have for this section. So let's see, before we go, let's look at strings sections. All right, so I'm going to have the comments. Section strings. So to search our string, what we want to do here is that we want to, just like we did for the string manipulation, I'll go to the code. So we have a paragraph, it says enter a string to search within. That's what we have here. And then we have an input that holds an ID as well, like we did for the previous one, and a placeholder that says type something. So the user knows exactly what to do. And then once the input has been entered, once the value has been entered into this inputs section, we want to be able to search with the methods, the methods we have for searching strings. So now below we have a paragraph that says enter a substring to search for. So a substrings will be from the value that's entered, we want from the indexes, that's the substrings, the indexes we want to use to search a particular string. So now we have the input that holds and also an ID to call for us to be able to get the input from this input field, just like we would do for this as well. And then the placeholder that says type something. Then we are going to make sure with the function using the event attributes that when the button is clicked, that the strings are searched. Whatever we specify in this function would give us the possibility for us to be able to search strings. So once we apply this, now you're going to see, understand how this is going to work. That's where we have the container for the ID that will display the content. All right, so just like we have always done, we're going to have a function, and the name of this function for the button, for the onClick, is called search string. So this is what we want to use to output, to create string functions. So I'll start with the function and give the function name. And then just like we did for the methods, string methods, we want to create variables. So I'll say let's string. So because this is a global, this is a block scope, this string would not affect this one. So if I name this variable str and I call this variable, it's not going to give me this because this is inside a block of scope and this is a different block of code. So you see the curly brace is what you can use to maybe understand the block of code. So everything inside here stays inside here, and everything here would stay here as well. So I'm going to do the same here. I'm just going to get the elements by the value, but this time it holds a different ID. So the searching string for the first ID, I'm going to copy this and I'll paste it. So this will make sure that whatever value that is entered, that's the string we want to search, whatever string is entered will be stored inside the str variable. That's the string variable. And then now let's look at the methods for searching these strings. So first we say let's substring. Since we have two inputs, let's also get the values from the second input. This is where we're going to search for the strings, the substrings. So we say let's substring, so sub str equal to, I'm going to copy this and then I get the ID for it. So the second input is substring input. And that's what we'll use to get the values from that input field. Okay, so we want to now use the methods to get this search. Now we say let's, so the first one we're going to look at is the index of, using the index of, so we say let's index. Index is our variable. And just like we did before, whatever is gotten from the first value, since now we want to make use of the string that will be entered in the first input, then use the second input to search for it. So first we get the value first. So we say string, and then we also want to now search for it with the method index of. So we say index of, so this is the name of the method. But now, unlike the other methods, we did not specify specifically what we want to affect, what we want the method to affect. We just gave an empty parenthesis, so which means it's going to affect the whole of the value that is entered. But here we want to specify which value. So we want that whatever is entered here, the string that is entered here, that's the value to search for, is what we're going to get the index of. So it will make a lot of sense once we have this done. So substring is the name of the variable. So whatever is entered in this variable, we want the string that is going to be the index of this string, the main string. So I'm going to close this. And then next we want to have the next method, which is include. So we want to check if something is inside, first of all, if it's in this. So let's say we have this as our input. So we want to know if it includes the letter S or it includes the letter A or something. So, but whatever is searched, we want to know if it's included, first of all, inside the main string that we have given. So we'll create a variable for that and say, let's include equal to str, which is the main string, and the name of the method is called includes. And in pair of parentheses, we're also going to specify the substring. So this is the search that we're going to get. So we're going to get from the search to see if it's included in the main string. I'll close this. And then we want to also know, just like we have character at, that's to get exactly a specific string from where the character is in the string. We have something like that here, which is called start with and end with. But this does not give us any of the index. We just want to know where it starts and where it ends, which character is at the beginning, which character is at the end. So we're going to put this in a variable and say, let's start with str dot the name of the method called starts with, and we give the value that will be entered the arrow first, and then we also do for the end with, just end with, sorry, ends with str ends with. Okay, so these are the methods we can look because of time. Then let's output this. We're going to create a variable. Say, let's output so just like we have for the formatted strings we created here, we're going to do the same here. So now we're going to add everything to display on the screen. So we say first, we expect that a string should be entered. So I'm going to put this in a quotes. So we're going to say string. And what string it will, just like we did for the first one, the string still remains the str variable. want to put this on the next line. So we use the break tag and specify what do we want to see next. We want to look at the substring. So we say substring. And substring, we call the variable we stored the substring, sub str. And next, we want to look at the index. Next, we'll be looking at include. This name includes.
Okay, Mr. Edmond, isn't my phone is running low and I don't have light here, so I think I would have to.
Okay.
I'll text you on WhatsApp.
Okay, you're going to get the recorded video as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so this is going to get the value for the start with, which is called start with. Oh, this doesn't have to be exact. So it starts with. And this is for the variable starts with. And the last one, which is ends with. So we want to see what's the string will end with. We'll say ends with. Sorry for that interruption. It's a problem on my network. So to continue, we are going to include the ends with. So we say plus the variable we created, which is ends with, and we end the outputs code there. And then let's get this elements. So we say documents, get elements by ID, and the ID for our outputs is string output. The inner HTML, and we want to get the output. So I'm going to save this. Hopefully, I don't have any text error. So if all goes well, we are going to have a string set here. But let's try with JavaScript as well. Say JavaScript. Okay. I want to write a substring. So let's get a specific substring. So I'm going to say v, and I'm going to search. Okay, so there's a little bug with our code, so I'm going to check to see where we have a problem. Okay, so I haven't refreshed the page. Okay, syntax error, that's line 105. That's line 38. Change color is not defined. Okay, this seems to be too many errors to debug here. So since this has already passed the time, maybe we'll just stop here. And basically what we expected to get from this code, from this script, is that we're going to get the methods for the substring. Because of time, we're just going to stop here, and maybe the recorded video, if I can debug as early as possible, it will be added to the recorded video. All right. Feel free to reach out on the WhatsApp group. I wish you success in your course and assignment.
Thank you.
Bye.